And Brad, how would you define the early season struggle for North Melbourne?
Yeah, it's been frustrating in a number of ways. I've talked a fair bit about the centre bounces. I think we've been the worst team in responding to the centre bounce changes. I think in 5 games we conceded 130 points from centre bounces alone. So if we just simply improved that one area, it would have changed the result of at least 2 of those games, potentially more. On the weekend we made some significant improvements and were therefore not starting the game 20 points behind like we have been every other week. So yeah, there have been some other areas. Our pressure's not what we expect. And that's frustrating because that's not a talent thing. That's not a capability thing. That's more of an organisational and effort thing. And while at times you can look at it and think the effort's been there, but the organisation to be at the contest often enough hasn't been there.
What are you making of the commentary at the moment? And bearing in mind, I've written a couple of things myself and I'll probably be writing stuff in the next week leading up to this game, particularly a David King column. I know you were asked about it. Do you think about it at all? Were you taken back by the fact that there was a reference to being a visitor?
No, I didn't. To be honest, I didn't even read it. So, David is trying to forge a media career for himself, and he's got to make comment that he obviously, well, hopefully he believes in it. So, but I think in situations like this, and I've been in this situation a lot, both as Simo said, as a player, as an assistant coach, and now as a senior coach, and I've seen people respond really well to that, and I've seen people capitulate, and the ones who struggle are the ones who get caught up in that, and they lose the laser focus on where it should be, and they start to worry about things they can't control. So I think criticism and accountability is really important in our industry, and I think you should be able to withstand criticism and certainly crave accountability, because those who don't crave accountability are either lazy or inept. And if it was something I was concerned about, then I would act on it.
Do you think it's at 1-5 and you're coaching this year and you're contracted for next year, and there's a lot of talk that you could have left. There's not a single person in football was expecting what's happening right now. So we've had greater expectations for you, or you're underperforming. And straight away after 10 years, or come up to your 10th year, people are saying, oh, I'll say it, I've said it, another, has the time coming, or is the time coming? If this doesn't change, is the time coming for Brad Scott? Do you ever put yourself in that thinking, or is it just, I've just got to do this daily, week, get this team up, and when we talk about it, does that annoy you?
No, it doesn't annoy me in the slightest. As I said, that we live in the present, and clearly we plan for the future, we learn from the past. But I think when you dwell too much on what's happened, I mean, we've got to learn our lessons out of the first couple of games of this year. And I think we're learning those and we're working really hard on those, but we can't get too anxious about the future either. And as soon as you lose focus on the here and now, then you're in a fair bit of trouble. So we just focus on what we've got to do this week. We've got a huge game coming up this week again. And I say to the players all the time that don't get too caught up in or depressed about the past, and don't get too anxious about the future. Do what you need to do right now, and the future will take care of itself, whatever it may be.
Is it a good part of the industry? Because a lot of media look to the future. We try and live in the present, and we look to the future. Unfair, or do you accept that as just the climate that it is?
No, this is a great industry to work in. We're privileged to do what we do. I'm privileged to do what I do, and the media is largely the reason the game is as good as it is today. And I really mean that. The media has turned the game into just the biggest show in town. It presents the game in a fantastic light, but with that develops a lot of passion, and when the results don't go the way you want them to go, that passion overflows at times, and it's a tight pressure cooker, but you don't have to do it. I mean, you don't have to be involved in it if you don't want to be.
There's a really good line before the game on Friday night about being a footballer or being an accountant. I've got one line.
I've got a problem with that because our CEO's an accountant. and my accountant rang me and said, right, no pressure being an accountant. Well, someone else is doing your tax return this year, and there is no pressure like financial pressure.
I need to ask you one last one, and I've written it and others have as well. You've always said that if the time comes and you're not the right fit for the club, you'll make that right decision. If this continues, do you accept that you may have to make that decision at some stage this year?
Well, the end comes for everyone. It's just a matter of how and when. The thing that I think we need to make really clear is that in 2017, we undertook the biggest exodus of experience off a list in probably modern history. And we undertook a rebuild apparently of about 3 months, because last year we went on to win 12 games and were competitive. So the problem that North has, to be perfectly honest, is a bit, I heard you talking about Sydney and John Longmire before. It's very difficult to tell your fans, gee, it's going to be a long, hard road, guys. You've got to sell hope. You've got to sell excitement. And that is a real challenge for us to do both all the time. And I think if you look back over the last decade, we've fought for everything that we've achieved, and to our own detriment at times, because it's very hard to build off a base of competitiveness.
I watched every kick on the weekend, and some of the commentators, and they're in the media, and it's great for the footy, have said, who cares what happened with North Melbourne in the last kicking the last 5-6 goals. I was watching it thinking, at least they are staying in the fight. And just what Simo was talking about, spirit and all that sort of stuff, I think if a club team hasn't got spirit, you're losing that by 90 points. Now, I'm not saying I'm right, but I was really curious what you thought of other people saying, nah, it didn't mean anything the last six goals.
No, I agree with the fact that it didn't mean we should win. Port Adelaide deserved to win. They outplayed us for the majority of the night. But when there's a lot talked about the intangibles and culture at West Coast, the Shinboner culture at North Melbourne, and the number one feature of the Shinboner culture is we are never beaten. As a football club, as a football team. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to win every battle. The club has been built on struggle, and the never beaten attitude is something we pride ourselves on. It doesn't mean we're always going to win, but we never give up. We always fight. And so that was critical to see the fight. And we've got to maintain the rage no matter what the scoreboard. Jack Zeeble always talks to the players about 10 goals up, 10 goals down. We don't change the way that we play and the way that we attack the contest. So that is fabric sort of stuff for us, and it's important. But by no means or no way are we satisfied with that, because we're outplayed for the vast majority of the night.
The other sweeping statement that's been made at the moment, Brad, is that you overestimated your list at the end of last year and you topped up to move further up. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
No, I think it's, as I said, the media is fantastic, and it's fantastic to get the message out there to the fans. And potentially we haven't done this very well either. But it's a complete fabrication to suggest that we topped up at the end of last year. I mean, we knew that we had Taron Thomas available to us. We knew he'd be a first-round selection and that he would be bid on in the national draft. So every club in the competition knew that our first-round pick was on the table. And we basically canvassed that to every football club. And we looked for future picks, we looked for current picks, and in the end, Jared Pollock at 26 years of age was the best of all those options for us. So we obtained Jared Pollock and got Taron Thomas anyway, as well as Bailey Scott, as well as Joel Crocker. So that was a key component to the journey that we're on. The other players that we added, I mean, you have a look at what we moved for them. They were back of draft selections.
Adam, Nathan Buckley had the presence of mind to call out the booing of Scott Pendlebury the moment that had happened in the aftermath of Anzac Day. I think he might have, at the grand final parade from memory, tried to quell the Collingwood supporters when they were drowning you and your captain out as well. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. We got booed all day that day. But, you know, I get booed down the street. I got booed this morning getting the coffee. So, look, I can understand why Nathan did it. It's, you know, sticking up for your players. And, yeah, look, it's hard to control 100,000 people and how they react. So, yeah, would I have said the same thing? Probably not. I would have probably made a bit more light of the situation and moved on. But I can understand why he did it.
Yeah, I think Bucks has probably had some experience with this himself as a player, and you should take it, I think, as a vote of confidence, because you don't boo the poor players. You only boo the greats.
Did you get booed?
No, they didn't bother booing me.
What about for some of your incidents over the years?
Which ones are you referring to?
Make sure that
I got a lot of.
I've only got 20, another 8 minutes. I'm sorry, I couldn't get all the footage up.
I got a lot of credit for things I didn't do, I think. But I think, as I said, passion is what drives this game. The passion is fantastic. And that being said, I don't subscribe to the theory that I've paid my money, I can behave in any way I choose. I'd like to think that in the heat of the moment, we go to battle, but sportsmanship, humility, being gracious in defeat, being humble in victory is something that Australians should strive for. And AFL football is the biggest game in Australia, and I think we do set an example. And I cringe when I see little kids in the crowd with people swearing and carrying on. Now, I understand better than anyone how emotional this game is, and it can get the better of you at times. But I think we've always got to think, how do we want to behave as an industry? And the fans are the biggest part of the industry.
Adam, should we welcome umpire accountability? So Sean Ryan came on radio in Melbourne on Saturday to walk through the controversial incidents which sort of led to the rage at the MCG on Anzac Day. Are you supportive of that, or are these things so subjective that it's hard to get a satisfactory answer?
I can see why the AFL are doing it and the umpires, but I don't like it. So that's just a personal opinion. And I don't like the profiles of the umpires that just get out there and do their job. We'll stick up for them. I think it's a really difficult job they're doing. But if it's to explain situation, I sort of get that. But to try and establish profiles, I'm not a massive fan for that. But having said that, if it's to explain something, I understand it. But I'm talking riddles at the moment. But I've been seeing a little bit of umpire attention the last couple of weeks, and I'm not a massive fan.
Have you got thoughts on how the umpiring has been going this year? And can I further ask, have you in any way contacted the AFL looking for explanations after some of your games?
No, we haven't. I've got more understanding of how hard it is, and with the new interpretation of some of the rules and how that all goes about, it's a really difficult game to umpire. So I think we've all acknowledged that, and they've got my support. So I haven't had the need to ring the AFL to get some inquiries, although we've been stitched up a couple of times in the last few weeks. I certainly don't think it's the reason why we lost, though.
I'll pick one for you, Brad. So the last decision in your game became a GIF and a meme and whatever else happened. The two umpires here, and I think this is the classic umpire, the decision is both right and wrong. It depends on your angle. So the behind the goals vision here shows the two umpires who adjudicate in this moment, and the first umpire pays holding the ball and the second umpire pays dangerous tackle. Same incident, two different angles. Watch the two umps here. Lower screen, holding the ball. Top of screen, dangerous throw. And both right in your...
They were both right.
In your own way.
Head first.
And it was Sam Wright who made the tackle. But it does demonstrate how difficult the game is to umpire. But can you imagine? It was a 15-point game at that point, so 20 seconds to go. But imagine it was 4 points, 20 points out or 20 metres out from goal. It becomes a massive decision in the scheme of things. But I think that we get ourselves into a bit of a problem when you come and try and justify everything. I think if I was running the umpire's PR department, I'd simply say that these are incredibly difficult decisions, and depending from which perspective you're watching them from, like every Port Adelaide supporter thought that was a dangerous tackle. Every North Melbourne supporter thought it was holding the ball. Now, the game is hard. I think that it's very difficult in the heat of the moment to be pragmatic, but pragmatism is what's required here. You've got to say, OK, that can go either way. It's the rub of the green. In the fullness of time, it'll even out. And if that's your attitude, then you're not happy about it, but you can live with it. I think trying to justify all these decisions all the time just infuriates people even more.